Dr. Jazz.
I've done these talks with so many musicians you played with.
Yeah, I was
Bill
amazed by
Stewart,
him.
Clarence Penn, everyone, and
Fantastic.
being a guitarist, of course, I stumbled upon you like way back, I guess, 20 years ago or something like that, probably, or 15. And,
Wow.
I was so happy last year when that duo with Maarten Hogenhuis came out and Spirits High. And I wanted to ask you about this one first when starting. It's like a duo, guitar, saxophone, and you have this jungle of effects, yet it's so musical. When did you start exploring this effect thing, actually?
Well, I have there are two sides of me. I think when I play like straight ahead and standards, I can not really imagine effects in that setting. Although I know I'm sure it can be done, but I have enough with just the amp and the guitar, and that's how I like it. But I do enjoy effects. So I have like a few outlets of that. So one of them is a band that I've been in for a very long time, and it's a quartet led by Jasper Blom, who is a tenor player.
Yep.
We made about 6 albums, and so I've been experimenting heavily with effects in that band. Some other projects where I was a sideman, I could use effects, and this, I think mostly most of the effects that we use on this album are done after the fact, so to say. So a few of the tunes are recorded just in a session as you would normally record a jazz album, maybe, like guys in a room, record it, and then we would this is a COVID project, right? So we would go over it and see if we could add things to it. And so in the mixing process or the post-production process, we've been playing around a little bit, and other tunes we have really layered. So there are about maybe 3 tunes that are recorded in layers, and I think that's where the most of the effects stand out. But in the mixing process, that's something we've done at home as well, just as the recording of everything. Since you have unlimited time, no gigs, just fun to get together. And the stuff that we've been listening to at that time, a lot of Blake Mills, actually. We found that some of the, just using the mixing and like the reverb and other things in a very, expressive way, not like in a way where you would normally use it in a jazz record, where you just, create an artificial space for the music to sit in, but really use it in a more as a color in at certain moments in the music where, that could be something that amplifies the music. So it's more audible, definitely, and there's more attention going out to those effects. Yeah.
Did you play live gigs with
yes, many
with that, like with duo?
Yeah, we try to solve it. Yeah, in the duo. We both have effects. So Maarten also uses effects on this sax. So we could do at least some of the, very like spacious parts. We could make them spacious, and some of the more dry stuff. And I have this setup where one guitar where I have 2 bass strings that go to separate octavers.
Yeah.
So I kind of play, like bass guitar and bass and guitar at the same time.
Yeah.
So live too for 2 or 3 tunes.
That's a fun thing. I also use like this Boss Poly something.
Yeah, I've tried that, but I've gone a more, like a more difficult route where I have like piezo pickups. Saddles, and that goes out to a little preamp, and that goes out to 2 mono signals going to analog octavers
Oh
and a
wow,
bass
okay.
amp, you know, so you have a separate output going to a bass amp, because I found that it really has like a cool, nice punch to it, where the digital octavers, I mean, there's some suggestion of low, but it's not really like
More
a nice.
clarity, yeah. It's not so clear. It's a little bit muddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, wow, cool. Okay, I have to check it on YouTube if there's like some duo gigs of this one recorded just to see what you're doing or catch you live.
Yeah, well, there is like the very first time we played, actually, that's a concert that's in on YouTube in its entirety. It's in the live in studio 150.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah, that was
that.
before we decided to make a record.
Okay, I have to check it out. Yeah, but you know, you mentioned this other side of yours and the jazzy side, and well, ever since you kind of came out in the early 2000s, let's say, or even earlier, of course, and you know, now after the COVID, I saw you play with Peter Bernstein and Mark Whitfield in this guitar festival thingy. And how did this happen? And
so I've been playing with Peter already like for years. So like once, you know, every few years, maybe, you know, when he's here. And this came together. I'm not sure. I think it's the promoter. I know the promoter who books these big concerts. It's called Guitar Summit. And he does it with different guitarists. And so we've done it. I've done it 3 times now. So it's the last one was with Peter Bernstein and Mark Whitfield, and we've had episodes with Philip Catherine.
Oh, really?
Maarten Taylor.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah. These are a lot of fun, and it's very you know, uncomplicated. We don't really play with 5 guitars at the same time. It's just everybody has its feature, and there's some duos formed, you know, and yeah, it's fun.
How do you do? You know, I saw like when you play with Peter, you have this some duo footage, like amazing communication. Both of you are kind of in this straight ahead line, but yet still modern. You know, Peter is one of the greats, and so are you. You know, when you play like these really modern lines, yet it's kind of traditional in a sense. But how do you play when you play with other guitarists? You know, you seem to not go in each other's way, especially I don't know when I listen to you with Peter.
Well,
it's just like...
I try to. There are only a few guitarists that I feel like I can play with successfully, because it often gets people get, you know, comping and leaving space, choosing the right volume, and, you know, like making the other person sound good. It's a craft, and it's, I don't know, it feels like when people of the same instrument get together, often it's a little bit of a struggle, or maybe like everybody feels like there's something to prove or something, you know, like all these unmusical things happen. So I'm a little hesitant when it comes to those settings. But with Peter, it's there's none of that. So at least I hope he feels the same with me. You know, maybe I'm not doing that. I hope I do. I'm leaving space and making him sound good and comfortable, you know, when I come for him. But yeah, since his playing is so what I love about his playing is that it's so melodic, and you don't feel like he has something to prove. He's not trying to impress his listeners, you know, and that's what I hope I'm doing too, because that's the music I like listening to. I'm a big Scofield fan for that same reason.
Really?
So him and Peter are definitely among my, well, they're probably in my top 2. Those 2 guys, for that reason, you know, it's I like it when it feels improvised, and also it feels like people are free and not so much you know, following a plan or trying to impress people with prepared material so much, you know, like that's not something I enjoy as a listener. So yeah, Peter is not doing that. He's purely, you know, musical, and a lot of love for music. And very social in his playing together. His comping is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this with you too. You know, there's like this no ego in a sense, you know, like guitar duos, like you said, or trios. You know, I love those, like, let's say Paco de Lucia, McLaughlin, and Aldi Meola. You know, it's impressive, but after two tunes, it's just, for me, it's too much, you know, it's just like, and with you
Yeah,
two, it's just like, okay, man, these are beautiful lines, and it's not like I'm gonna
exactly.
play faster, you know.
So I feel with Peter, there's so much attention goes out to how he plays the
Yeah.
things and not to what he plays, you know, and that's something I'm trying to do for myself as well. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Schofield, and was he the main reason you decided for jazz guitar, or how did this story
I
go
guess
with you?
so.
Like,
Yes. Yeah. Because he's one of the first guys I heard that was not playing rock or blues, you know, and so I was lucky enough to have some older kids in my high school that played, like, you know, that ruled the canteen sound system, and they played Schofield and George Benson on the sound
seriously?
system in the breaks. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how I got to know that music, and I was instantly like, "What is this?" You know, I only knew like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Hendrix and Queen, and a lot of you know, pop music from the '60s and '70s through my parents.
Did you learn that stuff like Stevie Ray, like, and to play it also,
Yeah,
or oh,
I
you
love
did
that. Still love it. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's kind of, you know,
scuttle
that's
button and all that,
the,
and
yeah, the first stuff on the electric guitar that I tried to copy is Stevie Ray Vaughan. I had a
really,
babysitter who was big Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix fan,
wow.
so he played those records. You know, like it's always a few people in your life, right, that introduce you to music, and when you connect to it, you know, it could have been somebody else, but you know, there's always a first time where when you hear it. So yeah,
Mm.
so then, you know, I was always investigative about music. So, you know, remembering those names, Schofields, and I went to the library and they had records. So I borrowed Still Warm,
Oh
and
yeah,
I just remember the first track, you know, that beep 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 beep
yeah,
beep.
yeah.
Um, and it made such a huge impression. Very clearly remember that moment. Must have been like 15 or 16, and so that was it. That was like a new world opened up to me, and it
Did you
was
start
clear that
transcribing then those solos and
no,
lines, or
no,
just
no. I would sing along with it, but no, not transcribe. I've never been much for transcribing. No, maybe I don't know why. It's just not something that I feel like would help me that much.
interesting? Okay,
Yeah. So I've never really done it, but you know, of course, I would you know, try to reproduce stuff, but by ear, and
yeah,
maybe just like, oh, this I remember that, like, you know, this, you know, all these lines that you hear. It's the whole language that becomes part of your imagination at some point if you hear it enough, and
mm,
of course, you need that connection with your instrument. But I found that a lot of
yeah,
that language is is really just, you know, playing out like chord voicings and voice leading, you know. So I've never yeah, that was enough for me, like you know, I stored the language, all, you know, just the sound of
yeah.
it, and kind of figured it out for myself. And I had to, like, in my jazz school, I had to transcribe like one or two solos, and I remember clearly not getting rid of some of that stuff that I got out of that. There was one Pep Martino solo because I love it. It's Just Friends
Oh
of
yeah, yeah, sure.
Alhambra. There are a few lines in there that are very particular for him, you know. And of course, when you transcribe it, you play it, and then I found myself playing it for years. Even that I didn't even want to play it, but it was just my fingers wanted to play it, you know. So that kind of I really had to get rid of it and start directing myself like, don't play that, don't play
Mm.
that.
Yeah,
So,
it's a problem. I think you know, like, I did some workshop in August now, and some players play like, you know, incredible lines, but it sounded like kind of Kurt Rosenwinkel, if you know what I mean. This,
mhm,
and it was
yeah,
amazing lines. I was like, man, you play, you know, amazing, way better whatever I play, you know, like just like technical fast. But it's just like if I close my eyes, I hear Rosenwinkel, or Mike
Yeah, but
Moreno,
I
it's
think
not you, like,
I think what mostly bothers me, I do recognize where it comes from, but it doesn't. It lacks that natural flow
mm,
and coherence that the original often does
yeah,
have. Because it's original to them. Those guys that invent language, more or less,
yeah,
or at least a dialect. Let's call it that. When
that's a
like
good one.
first language. Um, when he plays it, it's so natural and it's clearly personal and emotional. But if you copy that, a lot of those things are not present when you
Mm,
copy it. It's just the pitch that you copy.
yeah,
So it's all of a sudden much less interesting.
yeah. What do you tell your students? You've been teaching for a long time, and
Yeah.
how to find their voice, basically, like what you said now, just by listening and in absorbing, or
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things I find of teaching, because I could tell everybody, like, transcribe, everything, and I know that's in a lot of jazz education, that's like the way to get people to understand the language. But I'm not sure if you become a better improviser with transcribing. I guess you become a better transcriber for sure, but I'm not sure if that helps you coming up with original,
yeah,
like, stuff. So I would say, just, like, a lot of attention should go out to the connection between your imagination and your guitar neck. So that connection should be uh, flawless. And with transcribing, you don't make that any better.
yeah,
Or maybe a little bit, but I think there are more effective ways to make that connection better. So we work on that a lot. I have, for myself, I spend a lot of time playing solo guitar, like tunes alone, like chord melody, and finding different ways to do that. And those voicings and those connections give me a
yeah,
lot of ideas for melodies too. So I often really use the visual aspect of the guitar as, like, there's a certain voicings, and, like, if I pick those notes individually, there already is something. Maybe I'll need a few more notes around it, and then there you are. There are like 1,000 melodies right there. So yeah, that's something I try to encourage people to do also. I know there are different ways, there's, like,
yeah, sure,
scales, and you do everything combined. But I think it's good to try to develop different ways into an improvisation on a harmonic structure. So one of them is, of course, scales. There's nothing wrong with that, but the scale in itself is maybe not so. It's not so easy to turn into a melody. Scale is more of a conclusion. Like, all right, you have this chord note, and there's some other notes. And often it doesn't really matter which notes you play. It could be a chromatic note or a scale note, but it's often so rigid. A scale is like, those notes are correct and other notes are not correct. That's not really how it works. So for some situations, I'm sure it can be handy to know some of those scales. But I encourage people to learn to outline chords, rather play around it, write those notes. But it's hard. I don't know. I'm not even sure how I do it right.
No, it's
people like that. But I kind of refuse to tell everybody, like transcribe Bud Powell and transcribe this guy. And I'm sure it will give you something, but ultimately a lot of these guys can already play. That come to our school. They can find the notes. But it's more like, with how do you want to sound, and how do you want to improvise, and what's the goal?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense for me also. I've been teaching, so I always tell them, like, just play on one string the whole tune, like, and think about the functions and the notes. How do they reflect to the chord? Think about the melody, because then you get rid of the, I don't know, arpeggios or whatever, or just play in thirds or whatever, or think about nines on every chord, play a 9 or something, just to get rid of the, this.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there is this visual aspect of the instrument that can be super helpful. So finding a way to make it musical. That's the challenge, I think.
Yeah.
To use it in a good way, and so if you just press the notes that that are not wrong, that
Yeah.
seems to be a goal for a lot of people, and then making music out of that is extremely difficult. So
Yeah.
ear and imagination needs to play a role, and I don't know, it's hard.
It's hard. It is. No, I often ask myself this. I've been teaching for a long time now, also for 20 years, and then sometimes we talk about students, like let's say generation before us, like everyone has or had their own voice, like from Schofield, Frizzell, Abercrombie, Stern, Matheny, all these guys, like you hear two notes and Scott Henderson, whatever, wherever you go, it's like nowadays, I think it's like so many incredible technical players and lines, but when I hear them, I just like, I don't know who this is, it could be one of the 10. So it's like just this question of finding your voice in this world, especially on guitar, I guess. It's so heavy, I think, like how to discover that and how to make it.
Yeah, to find your own like unoccupied grounds in the landscape of jazz. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder because it's getting busy.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lot. What I notice is for a lot of students, maybe I was like that too, but there's a lot of attention to like the watts, like the notes, pitches, and like finding their voice in that and not in the how, so in how you play things. And when you think of Matheny or Schofield or Scott Henderson, when I think of Matheny, I'm thinking of how he plays and not what he plays, like there's an instance I can hear him, and it's how it's a certain how you feel when you listen to him. There's like an image of him, if you think of his way of playing, that transcends the what. It's you don't think of his typical, the typical things that he plays, even though there are typical things, all of these guys, and but that doesn't define them, So in the search of your own voice, I think it should, like, a lot of the attention should go out to how you play things and sound and articulation, rather than the what, and the what is so much easier because there are books about that. It's easy to, like, if you know these skills and it's much more brainy.
Definitely.
Got a lot of smart kids at these schools that they probably could study math.
True,
or
actually.
As well, so they need that to feed that part of their brain.
That's true. Like you mentioned, like that there's a flood of players right now. I mean, how was it for you? You've 1995. I guess that's like the big year for you when the Thelonious Monk competition and like.
Yeah, that's why I graduated my school, university, and I won the Monk competition, of course.
How did that happen? I mean, how did you decide to enter it? Actually, I mean, because being from Holland and
a friend of mine who's a vocalist, she made a record in New York with me, amongst many very good players. So Christy McBride was on this record, and Rini Rosnes and Billy Drummond and Tom Harrell, and the producer of the record, he was also the musical director of the Monk competition. So that's how I knew about it, or actually how she knew about it. She's kind of making things work. So she kind of sent me filled out the application for me. Pretty much pushed me into doing it. Yeah. So that's, yeah, I don't think I would have done it by myself. I wasn't ambitious enough at that point. Like, I felt like I was only just starting,
Because you were like, what, 23, right? Or
yeah.
Wow. How did that look like? I mean, you just chose tunes and played there, and like, who were the other players? Do you remember, like, that generation?
There was one German guy, Joachim Schönecker. He lives in Cologne. Still have contact with him sometimes. And Peter Matza who's still active in New York.
Yeah, yeah.
Cheryl Bailey.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
How
Yeah. Cool.
I think she lives in New York too now.
Yeah.
Back then, I think she was from Baltimore, and Paul Piper or Pieper. I'm not entirely sure. I think he's from Washington or near Washington. So at least those were the guys that were in the finals. I believe it's a long time ago. So, and I'm not entirely sure what I played. Yeah, I know I played like it was standards.
Yeah, sure.
In trio with Scott Colley and Kenny Washington.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
They were the rhythm section for everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah. Also, but maybe my lack of ambition and like the feeling of not having to prove anything, because I wasn't from there. I wouldn't have felt like I would lost anything if I didn't win. Yeah. I think maybe that's something that reflected in my playing, which is, I think, always a good thing.
Yeah.
And maybe the other contestants felt too much like if they didn't win, they lost because they were on their own territory, right? And maybe that made them play more, like they had something to prove.
Yeah.
But it can be a good thing, but often it's not a good thing. So I don't know. I don't remember how they play. I don't even think I heard them because I was, so preoccupied with my own performance. So I didn't relax and sit down and heard the other guys. So yeah, I'm not sure. It's not my guess,
Did something change? Like, I mean, of course it did. Like, what did that mean for you, like gig wise or recognition wise? Because
that changed. Before I was a student, right? Just a few months before that, I was still in school, and I did have gigs like occasionally, but very low key. So all of a sudden, I was, like it was on the news, national news, that I won that thing. So like a lot of attention. I got a lot of attention in the media. And of course, that resulted in some opportunities, concerts, but I hadn't even written a tune yet.
Oh shit!
So it was a bit early for me. It wasn't ideal. Of course, it was great. I'm so happy that it happened for me. But it would have been better if I would have been a little older and a little more experienced and kind of started finding a way like what I wanted or musically, so I do feel it happened a little too soon for me. But still great.
How did then the connection with especially those records here and there and Circles especially? I remember I wore that one out, those tunes, One and Circles, and I love that record. Like
oh, thank you, man.
It's like, how did that happen? Especially the story, with Sam and Seamus and Bill, I guess. Did Jerry kind of hook you up with those guys, or like?
Yeah, although I knew Seamus. I had played with Seamus before, and I knew Bill through Peter and Larry.
Larry, yeah.
Because they were I think I just met them in Holland, and we had mutual friends, something like that. I don't exactly remember. And Sam, I don't think I had met Sam yet. I just knew of him, of course. So yeah, this was the second record I did for Crisscross.
Yeah.
And the first record kind of wasn't that successful for me, like musically. The session was a little difficult, and ended up having to record like another session in Holland to get to enough tunes.
Oh really? Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, it was weird. Anyway, so that band was great, and I was a big fan of Seamus. His record, The Call, is still one of my favorite records. It's so good, and so I knew his playing very well. Yeah. Yeah, so just since you have it's just these recording sessions were short. And, so you had to come in the morning, not even that early, set up. Once you're ready to record, you have a few hours basically, because in the evening people have gigs. So it's like 1 or 2 takes per tune. So
Yeah.
it has to be like not very difficult music, you
Yeah.
know. So that was the goal. I wrote like tunes that are, you know, like playable
Yeah.
quickly.
Oh, beautiful tunes. Yeah. I mean, like
Thanks.
also the melodies and I wanted to ask you this, like also how do you write those tunes, or especially now, like, what's your approach when writing music? Like,
Well, I write, I guess, on the guitar mostly. Well, yeah, because I don't play piano at all.
hmm,
So yeah, it's on the guitar, but I write from imagination, I guess. Yeah.
usually like you practice and then you find something. I mean, that's how
No,
it's
yeah,
with me.
it's
I
more
usually.
imagination. I try to imagine like a tune.
Hmm,
It's not. It's often that I don't start with like a motif or a piece of melody or a chord sequence or.
hmm.
Although I do have like riffy tunes that are really coming from the guitar, like that circles
Yeah, yeah,
track. I don't know if you remember, but that's although I did get actually no, I do remember now how I wrote that because it started also like zoomed out, like okay, I want to write a tune with a bass line that does not start on the one. That's kind of deceiving, you know. And but the melody that clearly goes towards that one and kind of always sits like clearly
puts it
points at
together. Yeah,
the downbeats of the tune. And so that's an idea that's pretty zoomed out, right? And so that's how it, those things come together. Often other tunes are really like riffy,
yeah,
and it's like certain pattern, rhythmical pattern, or a guitaristic thing. Yeah, so different ways, but mostly, yeah, I often use the like visualization um, of myself and on the stage,
mm,
like putting myself in in the listener perspective, like in the room on the chair,
yeah.
you
I
know.
do that a lot too. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I try to imagine music coming from the stage. Yeah,
yeah,
that works really well for me. It's kind of easy to get going like that.
yeah. Are you still writing new music like nowadays?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
constantly. Yeah,
really? Okay.
yeah.
Wow.
I have a lot of tunes that are in search of you know a band. Yeah, I'm writing actually. I'm trying to write tunes for a band with 2 guitars and bass and drums. So one of my students or former students is a female guitarist, Ella Zirina.
Mhm.
She's from Latvia.
Oh, wow.
She's uh she's fantastic. She has such a beautiful way of playing. And we played together a few times, and we had this one gig with rhythm section. It's so much fun to 2 guitars can be so massive, and like the occasional like harmonic clusters that
Yeah,
happen.
I love that. Yeah.
So much fun, so yeah, I'm trying to write something for that.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
but like on the record that you mentioned with Maarten Hogenhuis, that's like a lot of the tunes that we recorded that I had already written those like years before. They were just there. I had no point. I mean, I didn't have a purpose for them.
Yeah.
Just started playing through some of it, and some of it really worked. And I noticed a lot of the tunes that I write, some of them tend to get a little like fusiony, and I don't really like that, and especially with drums, often it's like it's going over the edge of taste. It
Mm,
gets easy, and so a lot of that stuff ends up in bands without drums,
smart.
and then all of a sudden it works. So a few of those tunes made it to this record. So,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
but with
Oh,
drums it would have been like a little cheesy maybe. Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
miraculous how that works.
Especially about those albums like Views and Circles, like was there a certain amount of pressure for you, like being a band
No.
leader, especially with those guys, like, having Bill Stewart there or those guys, like how did you feel, or even now when you're leading a band, like,
No, I don't really, I don't feel like I experience a lot of pressure
hmm,
when it comes to that. No, and they're really sweet guys,
yeah, yeah, sure, yeah,
because they're very nice people, and um, I don't know, and they played so well, so I was like, kind of not worried at all, you know. Everything sounded so good with
Yeah.
them.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I always have yeah, no, I don't know why, but I never really, I'm very comfortable and mostly like in the studio or yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah, that's
just
good. Yeah.
I don't, maybe I don't care enough. Maybe I actually I in a way I think there's some truth in there. Yeah, in a healthy way, you
It
know.
makes sense. I mean, it's, there are more important things also. If
Very
you,
accepting to like whatever it is
yeah,
that comes. It's like,
yeah,
all right, well, this is it. It's fine, you know.
yeah,
Unless there's like a huge screw up, but like you know, that rarely happens.
yeah,
I'm very, yeah, I'm always like, yeah, you know, it's it is what it is. So this is how I play. I don't aim for very high.
Oh, come on.
I don't know. It sounds like it sounds. It's not like I'm not interested. I do want it, but I prefer that attitude towards
Yeah,
playing
yeah,
because it makes me more relaxed when I play, and
yeah,
I think I sound better. So
mm,
I'm kind of tricking out myself in a way.
yeah.
You know, I just
Well,
tell
that's a good
myself
one. I think, yeah,
you got to be okay with whatever comes out. You know, so if you
yeah,
really feel that, then it makes you more relaxed.
yeah. Did,
I
did,
don't
did
know.
you ever consider, like, after making these albums and with the New York guys and after winning them on competition, to actually, going there, like staying there or like living, I mean, what was
Yeah.
the choice not to do it actually? I mean, like,
Um, this is gonna sound funny, but it's the same, pretty much the same. Like I was there
mhm,
also before. I've visited and also like maybe a month here and there, sometimes
yeah,
like 2 months. But you know, I just the guys and girls, mostly guys that I saw there, that there were also like young aspiring jazz players like me. They were so serious about it, and I did feel like they really wanted that, and in comparison, I felt like I didn't want it enough, you know, not like that.
okay,
Yeah, so I didn't feel so in place there. Yeah,
yeah. That makes sense, like also if, I live in a countryside, like from a town 4K, and I think the quality of living also in Europe,
hmm,
also in Holland, I think especially nowadays when you talk to New York musicians or like everyone is just like, man, it's getting harder and harder there, especially now for the younger generations. And maybe even then, of course, already it was different.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. It's
big
yeah,
reason.
it's been on my mind, and I've talked about it with several you know good players,
Yeah,
and you know, like a lot of them kind of told me, yeah, do it, you know, come here, you got to play with the real good people. That's the only way for you to you know become better. And I'm sure they were right. I would have been a different musician if I had. um but it meant also, you know, like if you're going to invest, let's say 5 years of being poor and not, you know, and trying to get out and get your name out, and it's that struggle and hoping for breaks, like ultimately, let's say it works, you know, you get work, uh then I don't think it I think you would have to stay there,
yeah,
you know. So it's not just a few years. It
yeah,
would have been permanent. And maybe if your career is so far advanced that you're doesn't really matter anymore where you live, because you're, you know, yeah, your name is so big and you have so much work and you tour, um then maybe you could live in Europe,
yeah,
and because that's, I guess that's where a lot of them make their money,
yeah, yeah, sure.
you know,
Yeah,
touring there. Yeah, but at that point, that's really not. I couldn't really see myself living there for so long and doing that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Other
yeah.
interests also. I went back to university like when I was 28.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wanted to, you know, like develop myself in a different direction also. You
Oh,
know, I
cool.
needed like more a different side of me to, you know, use my brain in a different way, I guess.
Mm,
So I did that for about a year, and that was good. met some different people, read new stuff, and it's interesting. And yeah, I like reading, hang out with friends, and I'm not sure I could just have like jazz being like it's
I
important.
know what you mean. I know
I don't
exactly.
think I could go out every night to a session, and that's just never something I wanted.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Like, it's also funny. You know Jerome Harris, the bass player who played with
Yeah.
Dijonette, and
Mhm.
I did this interview with him, and I've known his music for a long time, and he did this like 2 incredible albums as a band leader, like early 90s. And I asked him, and then nothing else for the last 25 years. So I was like, man, why don't you, those albums are amazing. And he was like, yeah, I'm a musician, composer, but I'm also like a father, I'm a husband, and I'm a human being. And I was like, man, that's so beautiful. It makes so much, which is true, actually. It's what you said now. Like,
Mhm.
it's a tough one just to go out there and play, because in a way you have to also. And there are so many other things in this life to explore also. So
Yeah.
I know what you
And
mean.
there must be a European attitude. Partly, it's
Yeah.
maybe there's so much, maybe in the Dutch culture, especially. I'm not sure about the rest of Europe, but in Dutch culture, it being a Protestant country from its origin mostly, it's like modesty is very valued, and even though I sometimes despise it, but it's still part of me. I can't help it.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, yeah, come on. It's all the greats are like that. So, you talk to Frizzell and he's like, man, I gotta practice. I'm like, come on, man, I'm not good yet. Or Schofield or all these,
Yeah, that's right, actually. Yeah.
in a sense. But I just wanted to ask you to end with like about the Missing Link project you did, and you being your
With the HR big band.
yeah. I listened to that, and I found it such an incredible idea. Also, like Volker Kriegel, like no one, I don't think anyone knows him. I mean, I know him. I'm like a really geek, and I explore things, and I know the stuff he did with. Oh no, really? Like
I didn't know him.
The stuff with Mangelsdorf and with John Taylor, he did like.
Of course, I found out, but once I was asked for that project, I started seeing like, who is that person? I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you like your view on this difference between European jazz guitar or American, or even nowadays jazz music. If you still feel that. What's your view on that? Like in the past, maybe it was more like New York is like there, and nowadays I think like Europe is getting so strong in music, especially jazz music, and let's say jazz guitar also. Like, what's your view on that? If there's a difference.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Tough question.
Yeah, it's a tough question. Well, since it's not our cultural heritage, as some traditional jazz is part of the American cultural heritage. So I can see that people are like treating that music maybe with more respect. In results, it could be there's more, like traditional playing. It's like the music means something different than it does here. For us, it's just another flavor of the world, and
that was beautiful.
but that also could mean there's less depth in our versions of that music, especially if we play in like traditional jazz. But then it's also easier to mix it up with since we don't have to be so cautious, maybe in a way. Easier to mix it up and come up with blends and fusions and. But I don't know. I'm not even sure if because there's a lot of fusion coming from or fusion not as a musical style, but like a new additions jazz from the States as well. So it might be bullshit what I'm saying. I'm not sure. I have no idea. I can only speak for myself in this. I love that grooving jazz. I like. I don't know. I just have only have my personal taste. That for the rest, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't really see this distinction so clearly between like American and
Yeah, maybe not anymore even.
Yes.
Yeah, if they
Of
were.
course, back in the, like in the 60s and 70s, clearly it was American music that was
Mhm.
adopted here and people played it. And there was a big distinction in how we experience it. And it was so funny. I heard some Hank Mobley recordings with a Dutch rhythm section.
Really?
Yeah, in
Ooh.
the 60s. He came over here and he played with and it's I maybe I'm mistaken, but I feel like the guys that he played with, they for them jazz was a strange music that they copied. And you can hear it in the way in their swing. It's so everything's so emphasized, it's like, oh, we're
Yeah, yeah.
swinging. We gotta, just like those guys, that's how it sounds. So, like it's not loose or natural. And it's so funny, and like, trying to think of like how jazz was for them back then. There wasn't like every day that those
Mhm.
big examples came over to Europe. Like, sure, a few of those guys lived here,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like now where
Yeah.
you with the internet and all the records and and there's so much more traveling. So yeah. And of course now, in this decades, we travel the world and
Yeah.
everybody travels the world, and the music has been spread out, and especially like newer modern or whatever newer versions of jazz or improvised music. It's pretty far away from
Yeah. Yeah.
it being American music exclusively.
Yeah. It's a big jungle of everything. But
Yeah.
it's true, actually. Yeah. But just to end with, like, you mentioned maybe a two-guitar album, or like, can we expect like in 2023 a new album from you, like, or with new music and
I'm not fast. I'm
what
always
are the
close.
plans?
Also, I have kids and
Yeah.
the time. Yeah, but who knows?
Yeah, who
Yeah.
knows? I'm looking forward when it comes out. So
All right.
yeah,
Thank
but
you.
cool, man. But yeah,
Thank
thanks for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it and sharing some
Sure.
thoughts.
It
And
was fun. Nice to meet you.
yeah, nice to meet you too. If
Dr. Jazz.